Hi, I'm Jason Stepp with Stepp Manufacturing. We're here today to do a little training video on the SPHOJ 3.0 that I have behind me. It is a 4-ton asphalt hot box, oil jacketed auger delivery system on it. We're going to go over the safe operations, how to start the machine, how to set the controls, and how to run the hydraulics. It's a very simple machine to run, but you got to kind of know what to do and when to do it. So we're going to kind of start at the front of the machine and work our way back. Alright, so I always start with the most simple part of it, which is the hitch of the machine. Obviously, everyone knows how to hook up a hitch, but there's a couple things that I always talk about, and one of them is the safety breakaway, which is located on the side of the trailer. This is, more importantly, to protect you guys in the event of a disconnection. Your hitch breaks, the bumper falls off your truck, whatever. For whatever reason, the truck and trailer become disconnected. This is going to pull out, and it's going to lock the brakes up. So I see this a lot not being utilized in the field. Again, it's for your protection. So once that pulls out, it automatically locks the brakes up, so that hopefully we're going to keep this trailer out of the front of a vehicle. So I always do briefly talk about that. In the event of an accident, if this is not, if this is coiled up and zip tied to this, ultimately it's the driver's responsibility then. So I always talk to the guys a little bit about it. This unit is a heavy unit when it's loaded. It's a 14,000 pound suspension on here. So, when you're fully loaded, you're going to be probably somewhere between 12 and 13,000 pounds. I always tell guys to make sure that you level the hitch according to your tow vehicle. The axle system does have an equalizer in it, so it will balance that load out to a certain extent, unless the hitch is really high or the hitch is really low. So we've got a bunch of different locations to mount that hitch. It's usually a one-time deal. You're going to set it up for your truck and be done. So we want that trailer as level as we possibly can. I'm just going to kind of go over a couple of the options that this particular unit has on it while we're talking about it. The unit's equipped with a battery. The battery is located here. That's your start battery, and it also supplies power to the burner system and the controls. Once your engine's running, it's got a 70 amp alternator on it that's going to maintain that battery. So as long as your engine's running, your battery voltage is going to be good. This particular unit they ordered also with the optional battery charger. Simple battery charger, you just plug it into the side. It's going to maintain that battery, get that battery up to full power, and then it's going to go into a float mode. For some reason, if you ever wanted to keep material hot overnight with the diesel burners, you're going to want to plug that in to maintain your battery while you're running your burner system and your controls. So pretty simple, nice little compact system. It's a waterproof charger. It's a really good charging system on here. This particular unit also has a steel toolbox on it, just for your miscellaneous tools that you might need. Asphalt tools, scrapers, whatever. You've got storage for it. So the next thing we're going to kind of go over is the power plant, the engine on this unit. So this unit is equipped with a 3-cylinder liquid-cooled diesel engine. We use the Kubota engine exclusively on our products. We've had really good luck with it. It's a very solid engine system. It is a liquid-cooled engine, so we don't have problems with overheats, things like that. It is a model D1105, which is just under 25 horse. It's 24.9, I think, is what it is. Tier 4 emissions. It's a good little engine package. This engine is actually mounted on top of the fuel tank and hydraulic tank for this unit. That's all part of the engine mount package that comes on this unit, and then also the enclosure, which is insulated to deaden that noise of that engine. It's a nice little package. Like I said, it's got a 12-volt alternator, which is on the other side, which we'll go over in a little bit. And it's also got the hydraulic pump on it to power the hydraulic functions on the trailer. So I'm going to kind of go over the starting operations on it. It does have a deep sea controller on it. That deep sea control does a couple of things for us. It not only starts our engine, but it also shuts the engine down in the event of a overheat situation, a low oil situation. It also has a voltmeter built into it, an hour meter built into it, So the hour meter is, you turn the key on it, it'll show you how many hours are on the unit. It also incorporates our cold weather glow plug starting system on it. So that's all done from this little brain box here. Located right behind the brain box is your fuel filter for the engine. It is a spin-on type fuel filter. If you check the manual, there is a maintenance schedule on when you should change that. On a new unit, I always like to do those filter changes earlier than later on that first change, just because everything's new. That's when you maybe are going to pick up a little bit of dirty stuff from inside the fuel lines or the fuel tank or something like that. So I do recommend that you change that filter a little bit sooner, that first oil change. 50 hours, probably a good start. I think the normal recommendation is at 100 hours on your engine and your fuel filter. We'll go over the starting of this in just a little bit. I'm going to continue to go through the machine and the operations on the machine before we come back and start that and show you how everything works, because it's a little hard to hear once the engine's running. But nice little power pack here that powers that unit. The next thing we're going to go to is we're going to start talking about our pumping system on our optional tack tank. So we're going to, maybe reposition the camera so they can kind of see the valves here, and we're going to come right back. All right, so we're going to go over the operations of the tack tank. There always seems to be lots of questions about the tack tank. It's a very simple system to operate. You have a hydraulic valve in the back of the machine, which I'm pointing to, that we'll show you when we get around to the back. That's your forward and reverse, and that's all it is on the hydraulic valve in the back end, is forward and reverse. So you only have two options there. It's not rocket science. What we're doing is controlling a motor, which is controlling the product pump. So this is your product pump, this is your hydraulic motor. There's only two valves in the system. One valve that says product or flush, and then you have one that says wand or recirculate. This is our WPC valve, which we're going to talk about quite a bit. The flush and the product's pretty simple. What do we want to pump? If we want to pump product, we'll move that valve all the way into the product section. If we're done using it for the day and we want to use flush solvent to clean out our hose and wand and our pump, we're going to put this into the flush. If you are in the middle, you will suck out of both tanks and you'll have kind of a mess. So, this is the one valve where we're going to select either product or flush all the way. So that one's pretty self-explanatory. The flush tank is located on the other side. Once we get around, you'll kind of see it's a 5-gallon flush tank. We recommend that you put some type of environmentally friendly release agent in there to clean that pump and the hose and the wand out at the end of the night. So we're going to talk now a little bit when we're operating the unit and using tack oil. The tack tank itself doesn't care what product it uses. The pump is set up for a water-based emulsion on this particular unit. So it's got a 200-degree max rating on the hose system, and it's got an external pump, which is pretty important on a water-based emulsion system, because if you do get a gob of crap that's in your tank and it sucks into that pump and it slugs that pump, you can externally heat that with a small hand torch. Not a big Bertha torch, but a small hand torch. And when and if you do have a plug up, you're going to heat this portion of that tank, or that pump, excuse me. That's basically the rotor and the head of it. The rest of it's packing and a shaft that goes into the hydraulic motor. So you take a small hand torch and heat it here if for some reason that pump is plugged. It's not uncommon to get gobs of coagulated water-based emulsion in your tank from your material suppliers. That's a fairly common problem. You get sludge off the bottom of their tanks, or it's getting old, or there's lots of reasons why that material starts to coagulate. So it's not uncommon. So it's not a dumb idea to have a little propane hand torch with you when you're using that, in case you do get a plug up. Usually it only takes 30-40 seconds if the pump is plugged to get it going again once you get it warmed up. So it's pretty simple and easy to use. The other valve we're going to talk about quite a bit now is the WPC valve, or the wand pressure control. That's what WPC stands for, wand pressure control. This is going to control the pressure of the product coming out of the hand wand. Now we've equipped this hand wand. I don't know if you can see it, but we'll show you in a little bit. We've equipped that with a nice little spray nozzle, V-jet nozzle on there, so that you get a nice fan pattern. And this particular one has a 95-degree I believe it's a 9508. The 95 stands for the degrees. The 08 is the 8,000ths nozzle. So it's a fairly fine nozzle. If you get into a bad batch of oil, you might want to get a little bit bigger size just because your tips won't plug up as often. But you gotta be a little careful so that you don't over applicate the material. The WPC valve controls the pressure out of the wand, and it also acts like a relief valve in the system. So we do have a hydraulic relief, so if for some reason that pump stops, the hydraulic is going to relieve. But we do not have an asphalt relief system in here because they just don't work, because the asphalt plugs them up and they don't operate correctly. So we're using this three-way ball valve, or the WPC valve, to control the pressure, and we're also using it when we shut the handle off on the wand and stop the flow. It then travels back to tank, so it just recirculates. So if we want to use the pump to just mix the oil, which isn't a bad idea for water-based emulsion, to mix it once or twice a day, we're going to put that all the way down into the recirculate position. There it's going to suck out of the bottom of the tank, up into the pump, and right back into the tank. So it just kind of recirculates that nice and slow, which gives you a good mix, and it keeps the water-based emulsion particles suspended in the tank. But when we go to use it, we're going to put that WPC valve somewhere in the middle. Everyone thinks that, oh, it's wand, I'm going to put it all the way to wand. The problem when we do that is when we shut this handle off on the wand, the oil's got nowhere to go, so it deadheads. And it's going to sound terrible, you know, because you're hitting the relief. You know, it's going to moan and groan like you're overworking it. So that's why we want this somewhere. Usually you're about 5 or 6, maybe 7, depending on what product you're using, so that when I shut this handle off, it allows then the product to go back to tank. So the only time that you're going to use it all the way fully in wand is when we're flushing the system. So if we were out spraying, we'd have the valve and product, we're going to go to flush, sucks out of the flush tank. If I have this somewhere in the middle, it's going to put some of that flush solvent into the product tank, which we don't want to do. So that's the only time you're ever going to put the valve all the way into wand, is when you're flushing the product. Now when you go to flush the product, you don't want the wand inside the tank like it is now, because you're going to be flushing that solvent into the tank. You're going to need to put it in a bucket or dispose of it properly. So again, I'm just going to quickly go through this. When we're pumping product and we're spraying through the wand, we're going to be somewhere in the middle. When we go to flush, we're going to put our pump in neutral, put our valve in flush, and then go all the way to wand to flush that wand out. Now I usually leave the flushing solvent in the hose and pump overnight. Tomorrow morning I'm going to get here, I'm going to flush it again, because that way I know everything's clean and I know that the guy before me flushed it out. If for some reason I get here tomorrow and I can't get that pump going, then I know we got problems, but we got to get the torch out, get things cleaned out, heat it up again, and try to flush that out. It's not the end of the world if someone doesn't flush it. But you're going to have a little bit of screwing around to get things warmed up. So the main thing that you're going to have problems with is the pump is going to be plugged. If someone just turns this off full of asphalt, the pump's going to be plugged up with asphalt. So you got to get that warmed up. That's the first thing. If you have warm product in your tank, once you get that pump turning, you'll get that warm product flowing through there, and it'll flow pretty good. It'll flow through the hose and wand pretty good, but again, if someone did not flush it out, the other thing you're going to want to do is take the nozzle out of the end of the wand, just because that's the other small close tolerance part that's going to plug up the easiest. So I normally take that out when I flush anyways, just because it flushes faster. And it's not a dumb idea to have a couple of nozzles, in a little can of brake cleaner to clean those nozzles out in case you get a plugged one. You got a spare one with you that you can get cleaned out. Again, everyone is always a little nervous about the pumping systems, because if guys don't, shut it down right, then you have a plugged up mess, which is true, but it's not the end of the world. With a little bit of work and a hand torch, you can get things thawed back out. The Tack tank is 40 gallons. It's a bottom fired kettle. It's got its own separate burner system and its own separate control system. So you're going to set the thermostat. Say if we're using a water-based emulsion at 140 or 160, depending on the emulsion, it's going to come up to temperature and then shut the burner off and maintain and come on and off as required you know, during the course of the day. So it's basically like setting your thermostat on your house. So that's going to maintain that temperature. It'll hold 40 gallons. We highly recommend that you get and use your oil. You know, one of the bad things for water-based emulsion is storing it for long periods of time. I usually tell my customers you better plan on about 60 days is what you have before that material starts to separate and it starts to give you more problems. So if you get your oil, use it up, buy what you need, use it up. You know, at the end of the year, we highly recommend that you get the tank cleaned out or as empty as you can. You do have a big drain valve on the bottom of the tank to do that. There is also a plug in here that you can unscrew, and some guys will use a steam cleaner, or they'll put, you know, some solvent in there and let it get softened and then drain it. The unit is equipped with a hose reel, which is kind of handy, you know, so you're not dragging that hose on the ground all the time. Most of the time the guys are going to run that hose right alongside the fender here and out the back, so everything's in the back and easy to use and operate. Between holes, you know, when we're going from hole to hole, you're going to stick your wand back up in this transport here. You can turn it on so that you can continually circulate that oil back to tank through that hose. It's going to keep your hose warm, should keep your tip clear, things like that. So pretty simple system to use. Everyone's always a little bit nervous about it because you got oil and you got hoses, but as long as you clean it out, flush it out right, you're not going to have any problems. And when someone doesn't do that, which at some point someone won't, it's not the end of the world. You just have to get that pump heated back up and get that system cleaned out. So now what we're going to do is we're going to kind of spin around to the back of the unit and kind of go over the operations of the hopper itself. Alright, so now we're going to kind of go over the operations of the hopper. This is the main meat and potatoes of this machine. The engine's important because it's got to supply us power to run all the hydraulic functions, but this is what we really want, is our potholes filled, and this is going to store and applicate our material for us. So this particular unit has hydraulic operated top doors on it. Everything's operated from the hydraulic valve station, which is located right above the auger. So your top doors are right here, this very end one. That is set up on a spring to return, so you have to hold that to open that. We'll show you how that works when we fire the engine up and show you how everything operates. Your second hydraulic function is your compactor. That's also on a spring to return, up and down, and we'll show you how that operates in a minute also. Then your auger in and out. Now this is a detented valve, so you can turn your auger on and leave it on. So you have in and out. Why do you need in? Well, for some reason you ever get a chunk stuck in there, you can reverse that auger, which is kind of nice. And then you also have your Tack tank pump, forward, neutral, and reverse. So that's also on a detent, because obviously when we're using it, we're going to have that thing spinning in forward all the time. The only time you would use reverse on your Tack tank is if you get a plugged up nozzle and you want to get that nozzle unplugged, or at the end of the day before we flush it out, you could throw that thing in reverse and try to suck as much product out of that hose and wand before we do the flush. You just throw away less product that way. So the other thing that we're going to operate from the back of the unit is the burner controls. So we're going to talk about this quite a bit. I'm going to open the cover up. Cover does open up nice. The reason we put this on the back of the machine and put a clear cover on it so that you can kind of keep an eye on what's going on. You don't need to, usually once you kind of set this, you're going to leave it, but you know, you'll be able to see what the product on your tack oil temp is, what your product temp is, and what your hot oil temp is. So unlike a lot of the cheaper models, this particular unit is an oil jacketed unit. So what that means is we're using oil to heat our product. So it's built kind of like a boiler system. So our burner heats up that oil jacket. That jacket then transfers the heat into the material. What that gives us is smooth, even heat on our product. So it works very well with hot mix, and it works very well with cold mix because we don't have any hot spots and cold spots. We have very even heating throughout the whole unit. We also have a center baffle through the middle that has heated oil in it also. So we're putting heat into the middle of the mix, into the middle of that block of material. So the controls are very simple to operate, and they do run without the engine running for a while. So here I just turned on the Tack tank. You'll see the call for heat light comes on. That means that the thermostat wants heat at the Tack tank. There you can kind of hear it's fairly quiet when that burner's running. And it's a little hard to see with the sun, but here we're actually reading 67 degrees, and the bottom number here in green is actually what we're set at. It's actually set at 200. So I'm going to turn it down because we don't need to fire it while there's nothing in the tank. So you can see you just press and hold that, and that'll go up and down as required. So now I turned it down to 0. Now you can see the call for heat light goes out, but you can still hear the fan of that blower running because it'll continuously blow until we shut the power switch off. We do that so that we don't get any backdraft of heat and any problems inside the burner system. So all three of these thermostats operate the same exact way. The up and down arrow changes your set point. The top temperature is what we're actually reading. So the Tack tank's pretty cut and dry, pretty simple, because we're just operating the burner in the Tack tank. So we're reading the material temperature and that burner shutting on and off according to that temperature. In our main big hopper that holds our hot mix or our cold mix, we have 2 thermostats that control 1 burner. Because it's an oil jacketed system, we want to make sure that we don't overheat the oil, and we don't want to overheat the product. So both of those thermostats sense different places in the hopper. The oil is actually a temperature probe that's located inside the oil jacket itself, because your oil will come up to temperature fairly quick, or your product takes a little bit longer time to come up. So once that oil reaches temperature, the burner's going to shut off, even if our product's not, because we're heating our product really with the oil, not with the burner system. So it's kind of a little bit backwards a little bit there when you think about that. But once our oil comes up to temperature, it's pushing that heat into the hopper, into the mix. And once the mix comes up to temperature, then the burner won't fire until the oil or the mix drops. So it won't overheat either one of those products. That gives us a tremendously smooth, even heating system on this. Best in the market, hands down. It's what we use on our patch trucks. It's really what we use on our premium products, and this machine is definitely a premium product in the way of patch trailers, for sure. So on your product temperature, you're going to set that to whatever your material temperature is. If we're running hot mix, you're going to run somewhere between 275 and 350 degrees. Some of that kind of depends on your region, depends on the mix, but you know, it's pretty safe to say about 300 is where most of the country uses their hot mix at. If you're on a cold mix, like a high performance mix like UPM or QPR, one of those type of products, you're going to set your material or your product temperature at about 120, 130 degrees. You know, so you don't need a lot of heat for that high performance mix. If you're using an old plant style cold mix, you may be up in that 2 to 250 degree range. So kind of know what your products are. Talk to your suppliers, they'll tell you what temperatures you should run at. So the product's pretty simple. We set it to whatever the product wants to be at. The oil temperature, we're going to set 25 to 50 degrees hotter than our product. So if we're running cold patch at 120 degrees up here, we're going to set this, you know, at 145 to 170 degrees so that we have a little temperature differential there. Same thing when we're running hot mix. You know, say we want 300 on our product, we're going to run our hot oil, you know, 325 to 350. If it's cold out and it's really windy out, and some places in this country we're patching when there's still some snow on the ground, you might want to be on that higher end of that oil temperature just because it's going to maintain your heat a little bit better. So you have to have that temperature differential in there when we're setting our oil temp. So again, 25 to 50 degrees hotter than your product temp. Your main power switch is going to light up the controls for your hopper. Now you'll see we also put a voltmeter in here. We do that because if your burner quits firing and our voltage is low, or our voltage starts to drop, your burner will start to flutter and smoke and cause some problems because we don't have enough voltage to run that. So we do put that in. If you guys ever call and say, hey, my burner's not firing, the first thing we're going to ask is what's your voltage. Now one of the nice things with this particular unit, I'm going to shut this off so I don't have to talk over it. One of the nice things about this unit is we have its own power source with the Kubota engine with that alternator. So if the engine's running, we have plenty of power to run everything here, more than what we need. The other controls in the control box here, this particular unit has a optional strobe light, and then we also have a wash down system. I'm not sure if this one's equipped with it. Nope, this one is not, but it has the switch in it, so if they ever want to add it. The washdown system is a wand and a fuel tank or a solvent tank that we use to spray the hopper down, or shovels or tools or whatever else. If you do have the optional washdown and you turn that on, it shuts the burner system off in case you're using a flammable type solvent in there. The other thing this has on it, this does have an aero board on it. The aero board controls are located in the back. Pretty simple, self-explanatory there when it comes to aero boards. Obviously, one of the things with patching is safety. So, you know, when you're using this machine, you got guys on the street, so I always recommend that you got vests and gloves, and keep your eye out. If you have warning lights, aero boards, use them. The more the traffic can see you, the better. We're going to kind of go over the operations of the hydraulics again. Pretty simple. We're just going to run through them quick. We have our top doors open and close. We have our compactor plate carrier up and down. We have our auger in and out, and you can see that spinning right here. Now everyone always asks me that, you know, about the set screw. We actually pull that set screw out of that bearing. The reason we do that is because as we heat and cool this thing, that thing moves a lot, so we let that auger free float. The auger is tied to a hydraulic motor in the front end, so we leave that free float in the back end. And then your tack pump. Now, another neat feature on here is when we're potholing, you can shovel right out of the shovel pan. If you do have a large hole, you can fold the pan up and it'll dump underneath the pan directly onto the ground. Now, if you're doing a lot of utility cuts, some guys will take this shovel pan completely off. There's just 2 bolts, it's easy on and off. But it is nice if you're doing lots of just random potholes to have the pan on there. With that, we're going to walk around the other side. I'm going to show you a couple things on the other side, then we're going to fire the unit up and show you how all the hydraulic functions operate. All right, so I wanted to show you a couple things on this side before we fire it up. Engine cabinet here. You open that up. Everyone always asks where the dipstick is. It kind of blends in, so the dipstick's here. I always show everyone that. Your hydraulic fill is here. This is just all-weather 32 hydraulic oil, nothing special there. Your engine oil filter's here. That 12-volt alternator we talked about is here. You know, everything's nice in that nice enclosure. You can't see it, but the burner fuel filter is located right down here in between the cabinet and the tack tank. The other thing, your flush tank. So this is for your cleaning solvent to flush out your hose and wand system. We talked about that a little bit earlier, but I wanted to show you that with the different, you know, from the different side of the unit. Your tack tank fill, it's located right here. So you've got a manway cover to fill that. Do be a little careful because this is your stack for your burner, so if it was running, that could be hot or warm. This unit does have a couple of stainless steel tool holders, which are pretty popular options on this unit. You can put a shovel, lute, broom, whatever, anything with a handle will clamp in there nice. The unit is equipped with 2 steps also. Pull one out here quick, and you guys will appreciate this. So this goes in between the 2 wheels. I do recommend you put the pin in it, at least the main pin, because if you step off and that slides off, you know, now you've got a handle and a step to get up to scrape out the corners at the end of the night, and you can get both feet on there. So with that, we're going to go around the other side. We're going to start this engine up, and I'm going to show you how the hydraulics work, and that kind of concludes our training. The unit's a simple unit to operate. Make sure that you're safe. If you have any questions on this machine or the operations, please feel free to give us a call. Telephone numbers on the side of the unit. We can help you out with any operational questions or any troubleshooting that you may have down the road with your machine. And we thank you for your business. All right, I'm going to teach you or show you how to start this engine. The key just turns the power on. When it does that, it'll light up and you'll see the hour meter will come on. This particular unit has 2.1 hours, which is just the testing that we did on the unit. So here we're going to push the yellow button, which is your glow plugs. You're going to hold this in for anywhere from 30 to 60 seconds, depending on how cold it is, maybe a minute or 2 if it's really cold out. Once you've let those glow plugs heat up a little bit, you're going to push the green button and the engine's going to start. So now once the engine's started, you can hear once I close that cabinet, it's fairly quiet. We're gonna run around to the back end of this thing so I can show you how the hydraulic functions work. So I'm gonna show you how the top doors work. Oops, better press open. So the doors will open independent of each other. Once it hits the stop, then the other door will start to open. Now once they both hit the stop, you know, it has a relief in the system, so it's not gonna, you know, bust apart or anything. The compactor plate carrier, before you operate that, that does have a lock pin on the side. Now we've set this up so that when you're not using it, you could fold it down and get it out of your way. That's kind of nice. Now you slide your plate on there. This particular one has the optional water tank, so you can fill the water tank right on your plate, right where it's located. So again, pretty self-explanatory. And then your auger, you know, in and out. Again, pretty self-explanatory. But we wanted to show you how all those things operate. So that's kind of, you know, your hydraulic functions in a nutshell. Nothing too complicated to run, as you can see. Just be safe, you know, when you're cleaning out at the end of the night. Strongly suggest that you open the door, shut the engine off so that no one accidentally hits the auger while you're up scraping things out. We don't ever recommend that you go inside the hopper for any reason. That's why we put the steps on the side so that you can get up to clean that out. With that, we thank you for your business, and we hope to see you in the next training video.